she could be like, screw you, Greg, look, I just did it, I proved it. And I'm like, because I don't want other people to follow that, because for me, most times it's not going to work. You might go all in and gain the 50 pound 100, and then you don't lose it. But what do you believe? Is it going to work for most people? Like, should people try that?
Well, I mean, it depends on what your definition of working is. I think Stephanie was very clear that her goal.
Just to get this, because a lot of people criticize me, oh, you don't promote enough healthy fats, even though I'm into salmon, I'm eating that as much as I can, and I just wanted to know, what are like maybe 3 to 5 sources, great sources that are healthy fats, so that my viewers who are maybe not eating enough fat because we're into the low calorie dense foods and fats at 9 calories per gram and so on. So what are some of the fats they should be trying to get into their diet just to cover the basis of health?
Yeah, I think that the big one that most people are not getting enough of are those omega-3 fats. So you're going to get those in your fatty fish like salmon, like you just mentioned, or kind of trout, other kind of fatty-based fish. Other sources are things like walnuts, flax, chia, hemp hearts. Plus, you want to get those monounsaturated fats as well. So all your nuts, seeds, olives, avocado. Those are some of the best options that I try to incorporate as often as I can.
And a lot of people like me, we're taking in the omega-3 fatty acid tapped pills or what have you. How many of those can you take? What would you recommend? Like, some people, I coach a lot of people, they're like, I'm not eating any of that fish. I know I'm not eating salmon. I'm not having trout. Can that make up for it? And to what extent can it? And how many should they be taking?
It really depends on the person. So it's not like I can just give a blanket. This is how many omega-3s you need. But what I will say is, interestingly, the research we have on omega-3 supplements suggests that for people who with heart disease, yes, there are some clear benefits to supplementing with an omega-3 supplement, but we don't quite see the same benefits for the healthy population. And basically what I'm saying is that a supplement is never going to replace food. We're never going to see the synergistic effects that we see from food. So when possible, try to get it from food. But of course, I don't see harm in taking an omega-3 supplement. So, you can incorporate that. I would just caution people to look for an option that is the EPA DHA option versus the ALA omega-3s. So the EPA and DHA usually come from marine sources like fish oils, or for vegan, there's algae-based omega-3s as well. But that's going to be just a little bit more bioavailable. So that's what you're going to want to go for.
And so, yeah, obviously we encourage the food first, and supplements are a supplement on top of your food. But just generally, one a day, one twice a day, like what? Like, people I just want to hear an answer. I just want to be told something. Like, what are you, 10 a day? Is that too many? Is there a danger to taking too many?
You know what? I don't actually know what the risk of omega-3 overdoses, other than just throwing off your balance of omega-3s to omega-6s. But like I said, I would say most people are getting a lot more omega-6 than they are omega-3s. So when we're talking about omega-3s, we're really looking at trying to get the optimal ratio there. And most people are just getting way too many omega-6s in their diets, largely from taking, or consuming a lot of processed foods and processed oils and things like that. So yeah, I would say, start with one, but you can always kind of speak to a registered dietitian about your unique needs. But yeah, I think that everybody's needs are going to be slightly different on this front, and focusing on getting that higher quality EPA DHA option is where we should be really focusing.
And speaking of fat, is there like would you say a minimum amount of fat that you just need to be healthy? Like, let's go with maybe grams a day. Some people go by percents, like it might be 15% or 20% of their diet as being from fat. But is there a grammage that we can talk about here? Because like my diet is so high in calories, I can pretty much not even think about it. I'm going to get enough fat just because the calorie intake is so high. But if I were on a restrictive diet, say only eating 2,000 calories a day, like some males are down to that calorie level to try to lose weight, harder to get enough grams of fat because you're not eating many calories, versus if you're eating 4,000, so easy.
That's a really great question. I don't know in terms of grams, because we don't ever think about macronutrients in terms of what
Grammage, mostly
grams, because
percents.
it is, like the DRIs, for example, are based on like a 2,000 calorie diet, and they're based on percentages for macronutrients. So we know for fat, the recommendation is like 20 to 35%. So I would try not to go below that, especially for women, because we know that there's so
For
many
hormones.
metabolic and hormonal functions associated with getting enough fat. And unfortunately, we see that a lot on Instagram and YouTube and things like that. Some of these high carb, low fat diets are so low in fat. Like you said, like you're consuming so many calories that it wouldn't be a big issue for you. We run into issues when we see a lot of these like Instagram influencer females consuming already low calorie diets and just basically living off fruit and vegetables. That's where I have an issue, because I worry about menstrual regularity and other kind of reproductive hormones and things like that.
Yeah, it's just like with my cookbook. If you select, like there's maybe close to 200 recipes, if you select every single recipe that has no fat, you'll not have enough fat in your diet. But that means you're avoiding recipes that have salmon in and different things and so on. So if you're trying to have no fat in your diet, you can be in danger of having not enough. So you just have to consciously think, well, maybe one meal of the day should have a little bit of fat in it. And if you do that, I think you're good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about balance. So, I mean, not every meal has to be perfectly balanced, but I do think we want to try to incorporate some fat for the source, for at least for the sense, for the benefit of those fat soluble vitamins, and that we want to make sure that those are getting absorbed adequately. And then, of course, we can focus on the fats that we do consume being of the higher quality omega-3s and monounsaturated fats, which we know are those heart healthy ones. Yes, obviously they contribute calories, so I'm not trying to pretend that you can like just glug back olive oil and it not have consequences. But I think if we focus on some of those higher quality options, then we're in really good shape.
Many of your videos seem to promote being healthy at any size and not to vilify foods. Do you believe that you can be healthy and obese at the same time? Is dieting with or for the purpose of weight loss bad?
So yeah, these are some really big questions. So first of all, I think that I have come a long way in my kind of professional stance on like the health at every size versus the weight loss conversation. And I actually have a whole video that basically outlines where I stand on this now. I think I'm really kind of in the middle at this point. But to clarify, it is health at every size, not health at any size or healthy at any size, because I find that healthy at any size insinuates that it doesn't really matter what size you are, or how much weight you gain, or how much weight you lose, that you will always be healthy. And I think that even like true health at every size, dietitians or proponents would see that, yeah, there are some health risks, obviously, of being obese. Their position, however, is that weight loss or prescription of a weight loss diet is not necessarily the cure. And I would say to that, it might help, weight loss might help, but it's not necessarily getting at the root issue. And in my experience, a lot of people who are like morbidly obese, they didn't just get that way because they like the taste of Krispy Kremes, right? Like there's a history there, and oftentimes it actually has very little to do with food. Not to mention that we also have a lot of research to suggest that societal fat phobia and weight bias, and also like mistreatment in the medical community, also can help perpetuate some of these health disparities. So my professional and personal thoughts are, would a person be better off health-wise to not be obese? Yes. Yes, they would. But is telling somebody to go on a weight loss diet going to solve all their problems? I would say it's more complicated than that. So we really want to make sure that we're getting to the root cause, so that we're not just actually further perpetuating a cycle of, disordered eating and restriction, poor body image, binging, all of those kinds of things. Getting to that scarcity mentality that typically results in overeating. In terms of, is going on a diet for weight loss inherently bad? No, I don't think so at all. I believe in body autonomy. I believe it doesn't matter if you want to lose weight for aesthetic reasons or for health reasons. You have the autonomy to do that. And I respect that. I really do respect all goals. It's really just not for me to judge. But I do think that finding a way to make these changes that is additive to your life, that is something that you can sustain for the rest of your life, that will not drive you into that scarcity mentality and perpetuate any kind of disordered eating, because even people, like people who are obese, there is also disordered eating happening there as well. So I think that that's like a really delicate art that is not typically well supported by all the crap fad diets that we see online.
Yeah, I would say personally, I don't think you can be healthy at any size. Like if you're 400 pounds and you're doing an hour of walking a day and you're lifting weights and you're doing everything, you're just Mr. Fitness, but you're 400 pounds, I don't think you're going to be healthy at that weight. But I do believe in healthier at any size, meaning wherever you stand right now, you're 500 pounds, for whatever. You can be healthier than you are if you were to lose some weight, or even if you maintain that weight and add in exercise, like 150 minutes of exercise a week, you're going to be healthier than you were. You might not be perfect, but it's not about being perfect. It's about being the best you that you can be. That is really the message I promote on my channel. I'm not about everyone getting shredded or ripped. It's just about being the best version of yourself. So if you're sitting on the couch and not exercising, you're eating chips because it's the time of the cove and you're depressed, I'm like, get off your ass, burn off some calories, eat healthier. It's not about looking perfect, but just being better. I'm sure you agree. You have to.
Oh,
You
I
must,
do
yeah.
agree. And I mean, ultimately, I can't just look at somebody and tell you what their like blood work would say, obviously. So yes, I think it is about being your best self. And I just want to also like flag that it really depends on like what your definition of health is. And that's such as like a loaded question, because like health to me is not just like your lab work. Health to me also is your emotional, your mental well-being. And I could look at a lot of the girls on Instagram who look amazing and are fit as a fiddle, but they could be so emotionally unhealthy that it's like the risk and benefit analysis going on. So yeah, it's a very complicated question. And like, obviously there are health risks of associated with being clinically obese. Whether it's like, you know, on your heart, your joints, etc., it increases your risk for chronic disease. That is true. That is, we have evidence to support that. But like you said, it's about kind of being your best self. And if you're engaging in healthy behaviors, eating a healthy diet, exercising and moving your body, I think you're really doing the best job that you can. And obviously, engaging in those behaviors is going to reduce your risk of some of these issues.
Yeah, and I would say that healthy in general, for me at least, it's more than just the absence of disease, not being sick. Obviously, if you're sick, you're not healthy. But there's that mental component, the physical component, and the social component as well. So to be overall healthy, you have to have balance in all three of these things. And if you're 400 pounds, you're missing out on the physical part. You might be mentally, you're great, you have all kinds of friends, you go out and you're loving life and you're going to the beach and you're not shy and you love your body and you're all over, this is great. But if you're 400 pounds, you're still 400 pounds. And it's like, it might not even be your fault. So a lot of people think I'm hating on them. I'm like, it's a lot genetic, because I'm fortunate. I tried to get as fat as I could on purpose to lift more weights, and I couldn't. My genetics were just preventing me from being able to do that. I couldn't get to 300 pounds. I just physically couldn't. Other people, they're hungry and they're 300 pounds. So, I mean, what do you expect? Of course, it's going to be so much harder. So for me, because of that genetic component, I know that not everyone can everyone can be lean, but not everyone can be lean and not be miserable.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's really important too.
What is your opinion on the all-in approach about trying to deal with, like, you're overweight, you're trying to lose weight? It was popularized by Stephanie Buttermore. You basically can just eat as much, don't worry about it, and then it'll all work its way out in the end, and hopefully you lose weight, because it worked for her. It's because I've been so far against it, but then I watch her and she's successful, and it's like, basically she can be like, screw you, Greg, look, I just did it, I proved it. And I'm like, because I don't want other people to follow that, because for me, most times it's not going to work. You might go all in and gain the 50 pound, 100, and then you don't lose it. But what do you believe? Is it going to work for most people? Like, should people try that?
Well, I mean, it depends on what your definition of working is. I think Stephanie was very clear that her goal was not weight related. It wasn't like a reverse diet. Her goal was to get back her hunger and fullness cues, to restore those cues, to kind of fix her extreme hunger. And it did work in her case, which is why she was so happy. And in her case, yes, she overshot her weight and it came back down. And it actually is really normal to see this kind of pattern happen in a lot of eating disorder recovery programs, where you almost have to like pay back the debt from so many years of restriction or so long of restricting. And that causes this extreme hunger. So there's a physical hunger happening. And then there's a psychological hunger that often happens where when you've restricted foods for so long, and as soon as you allow yourself, you give yourself permission to eat all the forbidden foods, you go crazy and you will just kind of like binge on them and overconsume them. But generally speaking, the novelty does wear off once your body has come to realize, like, okay, this is not a cheat day. This is real life. I'm going to get fed again tomorrow. You can calm down. And typically then the appetite, kind of the physical hunger subsides and the mental hunger subsides. And that's what happened in Stephanie's case. And I know when I was recovering from an eating disorder, I had already weight restored. And I guess I kind of went all in, even though I didn't label it as that. But basically, like, I had weight restored, but I still was having these restrictive orthorexic thoughts. And at the time, I was in a PhD program, basically a PhD track program, graduate degree in sociology. And I was so miserable. I hated it. I hated that school so bad. And all I wanted to do was blog and vlog full time. And so I actually dropped out and shed that emotional baggage. And as almost an act of rebellion against my dietetics training, and the fact that I was a dietitian already, I almost decided I didn't want to do anything to do with nutrition. I wanted to go into food blogging. And so I was going to restaurants and food events pretty much 5 days a week. And I had to very quickly learn to trust my body. So it was like, this is not a cheat day. I might be at Taco Tuesday tonight, but I don't need to gorge myself because I got a donut event tomorrow, and I got a wine tasting on Friday, and I have all these fun, fulfilling food experiences. I don't need to overeat in this moment and start the diet again tomorrow like I would have in the past. So that was a really big turning point in my relationship with food. And so it worked for me too, even though I never labeled it as going all in. My weight was always quite stable and healthy, and I landed in my settling point, as I call it. And so, I do think that, especially for folks who have a history of disordered eating in the sense of like restriction, that doing some kind of like all in is an effective way to restore those hormones, to rejig their hunger and fullness cues. But it's not a one size fits all situation. And depending on somebody's history, their emotional history, their use of food as a coping mechanism, it may or may not work. And again, it depends on how you define working. So Stephanie's definition was never to land at a specific weight. It really had to do with her hunger. And I think in that case, it did work.
And I think that I mean, honestly, I'm happy it worked for her. Like, obviously, I want everyone to be able to be healthy and happy. It's just, for her, I do believe that her genetics are like very, very good. I believe that her genetics are like mine, very good, above average genetics. So, for example, when I was force feeding myself to get as heavy as, I was eating as much as I want whenever candy, it didn't matter, to get as heavy as I could, but I only got to 232 pounds. And then now I've lost the weight. But for other people, they might go all in, and if they had the genetics to be, maybe they have more fat cells or whatever, they might keep going up to 300-400 pounds, and then before they know it, they're like, well, why didn't my weight settle back down? So that is my worry, because I've been around bodybuilding. I've done 59 bodybuilding competitions. I've dieted, starved, probably more than 99.9% of the world. So I know what it's like to be extremely hungry. And when I say extreme, I'm like to the 10th degree, like just crazy hungry. I mean, I've starved myself down to 4% body fat. For like, when you're that lean, you are starving. And I only go up a certain amount of weight, and I know a lot of people that I've seen diet the same way I have. They gain 70 pounds, 100 pounds, and they never lose it. And so that is my worry, that people will go and gain all that weight and have to deal with seeing that reflection in the mirror of like, okay, I had abs and now I'm like 50 pounds overweight, and it's hard when it happens in a month or two. So rather than going all in, what I tell people is to kind of more slowly gain the weight back. Rather than, if you're on a 1,500 calorie diet, don't go to 5,000, go to 2,500 and see how that works. And then slowly gain that weight back, but not be overly restrictive, trying to diet all year. And what do you think about those in comparison? Going all in versus going halfway in?
Yeah, I actually have a blog post that outlines the difference, like all in versus like reverse dieting, which is kind of like what you're describing. And the way I see reverse dieting, again, it depends on your goals. If you're just trying to restore your metabolism, I kind of see reverse dieting as kind of going half in. Like, you're not fully going to restore your metabolism to what it should be. You're not likely going to reach your settling point where your body wants to be. So yes, it's possible that your set point may not be the weight that you aesthetically want to be at. That's just the fact of life. We all come in different shapes and sizes. And like you said, you tried to get to 200 to 300 pounds and you couldn't. So that's because your set point range is so strong that no matter how hard you tried, like, it would have taken a lot for you to shift it outside of that upper range. And the same goes for shifting below people's lower range. It takes a lot of constant energy to stay there, or to shift yourself there. So yeah, I think like different strokes for different folks, and it really depends on your goals. It depends on your fears and what you absolutely do not want to happen. And if you absolutely are not willing to risk your weight going above a certain point because you are concerned that that is your set point, is above where you want it to be, then all in may not be the right solution to you, for you. But again, it really depends on how you view success and what you're willing to risk.